Alright, Electric Motor Division, Service Department, the Locomotive Service Manual, SD45, Section 6 Introduction. Service Manual with the guided selection control, electrical transmission system caution. The data appearing with this section is simplified and intended only with the guide with the explain with the locomotive transmission and control and the circuit shown that do not necessarily agree with the wiring schematic, the wiring of the specific locomotive. Although the control applicable locomotive wire diagrams when working with the control system, the tip of the control system troubleshooting adjustment, you the information presented here and the adjustment procedure appear with the schematic drawing, the charts and the graph is drawing, then later with the section with the locomotive service manual take precedence over the information presented in this section. Introduction. The purpose of the section is describing the electrical transmission power control system with the use of the SD45 locomotive with the block diagram figure 6.1 illustrates this system. The major difference between the new transmission power control system and the equipment with the earlier model of the Lion. Use of the AR10 alternating current generator integral with the solid state rectifier summit to produce the DC power locomotive with traction. Use of the miniature of the magnet of the apply, the trigger of the call with the sensor of the accompanying transistor match with the reference voltage signals and the apply engine throttle with the load regulator traction and alternator power feedback signal with the feedback signals that are taken in from the AC to the side of the AR10 rectifier assembly applied with the precision component to achieve the power of performance control required no need for the circuit adjustment. The output of the sensor U with the control traction alternator. Section 3, the control rectifier assembly controlled by the sensor output to apply D14 alternator power to the traction alternator field windings. U with the throttle control variable resistance during locomotive speed to reduce the variable reference voltage signal with the load regulator resist for the maximum output of the position of the time of the locomotive start. Locomotive responsible for the throttle change, thereby also immediately power itself with a low level during the low level throttle position. Alright, this show the throttle going to the engine governor with the rate of the control panel going on the sensor bypass of the performance control panel. You have your potential current transformer going to power rectifier assembly DC to the motors, AER to the alternator, DP14 alternator, load regulator to the 645 engine rate control panel, the throttle response regulator, static voltage regulator to the performance control panel, also the sensor bypass panel, sensors going to control rectifier to the DC14 alternator. Caution: when the diesel engine starts with the DC auxiliary generator initially self-excited with the residual magnitude of the engine speed, with the increase the generator voltage bill, with the power of the auxiliary generator output the feed with the bill with the static voltage regulator output the voltage regulator with the properly excited with the auxiliary generator, maintain with the constant voltage with the static voltage regulator, also provide with the tab with the stable reference voltage with the control purpose to obtain the part with the auxiliary generator output the U with the excited with the field with the D14 alternator field D14 selection maintain voltage amount normally constant level whenever the diesel engine is running. The three-phase alternating current is taken from the D14 alternator directly through the controlled rectifier assembly, excited with the field of the AR10 traction alternator output of the control of the rectifier assembly, determine the magnifier amplifier type of the response with the signal related to the traction alternator output, the throttle position, load regulator position, three-phasing alternating curve through the starter, AR10 traction alternator speed, all the power rectifier assembly. This is located with the AR10 housing DC power for the rectifier assembly is applied to the locomotive traction motor contents. The section of the locomotive mainly divided into parts as follows. The part A, the basic reactor theory, the understanding of the locomotive, the electrical transmission power control system, independent view the sum of the fundamental of the concept of the reason first part of the cover of the basic reactor theory of the theory of the basic of the semiconductor theory of the equal the importance of appear with another electric motor division electric motor division locomotive control manuals called entitled static voltage regulator. Part B is the electrical transmission part described with the traction alternator power rectifier assembly. Part C, the excitation system power traction and control with the throttle of the engine load of the regulator through the system of the control excitation traction alternator field that describes the function of the system. Part D, the transition and shunting of the SD45 locomotives undergo with the one chain to the motor connection with the traction alternator, 5 steps the shunting before transition, 3 steps after. Part E, special device. The circle that includes a brief description of special device, the general new electric motor divisions. Locomotive service part, service manual, section 6, part A, this election SD45. Basic reactor 3, magnified amplifier made with the iron core with the copper wire winding, solid state with the rectifier and air with the characteristics of the component for the result of the low maintenance for the high reliability, long life. Essentially, magnetic amplifier function for the controllable rectifier with the place between the source of the power with the load for the allow with the sample input the signal with the control large output with the reactor simply with the coil contact with the alternating current with the circuit during the only half of the AC current of the passive of the oil coil. One direction magnetic flux built up of the contract with the A6A with the during the second half of the cycle of the flux reverse polarity of the build up of the contracts Flux lines cutting of the coil is the opposite of the current flow with the the flux developed and the core coil is weak. The opposite with the current flow is small. So the voltage flux expanded voltage and the flow contraction. 6A show the reactor with an air core. When the coil is round and the iron core with the more of the flux is produced with the flux line with the contrary with the iron core with the opposing change of the polarity with the figure 6A with the consequently current flow with the coil with the increase of the oil side with the increase of the voltage at the coil. However, the voltage becomes great enough for the flux to produce with the saturate with the iron core with the flux line with the split out with the core. The effect of it is that this spill of the was without a core. The current flow with the coil will increase rapidly and the voltage increases. 6A2 show the reactor of a toroidal iron core. The current flow of the iron core flux building up within the core, small voltage, medium, halfway voltage, large current flow, the core saturated flux spills out, and a downward voltage of small current flows out, residual flux in opposition. When polarity of the coil is reversed, the portion of the flux is spilled out with the core of the collapse readily with the flux with the core of the retained with the core of the opposite of the bill of the flux in the opposite direction due to the opposing flux with the core will not generate the saturation level. Large voltage drop the current of the coil with the current will through the coil, and the small degree of the saturation may be the control with the independently illustrated figure 633. Play with the DC control winding with the core with the winding with the same with more of the term, but then through the output winding with a small amount of the DC current that can bring without about saturation at the same point. At some point with the AC half-life of the acid, the saturation half of the current flow of the output winding is large foul, but the sooner of the core becomes saturated during the half cycle, the greater the amount of current that will flow with the output of the winding. Figure 6.3 shows the bias of the control windings added to the controller. At the time the voltage required saturated with the core, large flow of the current core, saturated DC control winding control calculated to obtain the desired amount of desaturation or dial black currents during the second half of the cycle polarity with the residual flux retained. Battery, rheostat, overspeed fluxing, overdeveloping in the bypass of the minimum outputs, adjusting and obtaining the output, rheostat, and adjusting minimum control with a winding basic battery. The small amount of the DC control can be made with the control even with a larger amount of the output current with the rectifier play for the output current circle with the rectifier retractor for the rectifiers play for the output for the circle with the rectifier reactor for the combination of the magnifier amplifier to prevent the desaturating effect. The change of the polarity have depending on the condition in the air of the magnetic amplifier for the current system. The desaturating effect may be desired but obtained with the place for the calculated amount with the resistance around the block rectifier. Addition with the DC control winding with the DC base with the winding may be used in function with obtained with the minimum output with the control current with the minimum value with those also used with obtained with the balance between the several parallel magnetic amplifiers. The type of the transducer rectifiers are shown figure 6A4 with the reactors are shown figure 6A4 with the attack of the generator current with the flow of the alternating current with the AC coil with the current transducer, the portion flow with the current with the bypassing with the reactor with the core. The type of the transducer may be with the motor field with the current transducer. For the other applications for the current transducers are the detection from the current with the dynamic braking grid with the locomotive with the equipped with extended range dynamic braking detecting of the braking signal field loop with the locomotive with the so equipped with the reactor with the type shown figure 6A4B with the detect generator current with the voltage flow with the alternating current with the AC coils. Figure 6.4 shows the current voltage over the transducer rectifier with the traction alternator field currents around the AC terminal with the gapless iron core with the main generator voltage 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 on the AC terminal with gaps iron core current. The transducer with the reactor 3.4 with the proportional combustion current passing within the reactor with the core plus with the flow the direct current with the coils with 1 and 2. The function of the two separate core reactors combined with a single reactor. The construction of the reactor can be simplified, noting the traction alternator with the field current with the nominally proportional to the traction alternator output current. In the proper proportion of the term of the cable carrying the generator, the field current is passed through the reactor core, with the resulting effect must be the same with the total generated curve of the current passed with the reactor core. Note that the AC machine of the traction power makes it possible to take the signal of the proportion of the main generator voltage of the amp directly to the AC side of the traction alternator rectifier assembly. On the GP4 locomotive, the generator voltage signal is obtained with the AC side of the AR10 rectifier assembly made with the generator potential transformer. The GPT will while by amperage of the signal will obtain the DC side of the rectifier mean the current of the transducers. Basic SD40 locomotive of the reactor with the type of the shown figure 6A4B with the B obtaining the combined generated voltage and amperage centrifugal. On the SD45 locomotive and the SD40 locomotive special equipped the power with the matching the generated potential transformer on the AC side of the rectifier assembly provided with the voltage signal current transformer, and also the AC side of the rectifier assembly provided with the generator current signal. And that was Locomotive Service Introduction Section 6 and 6A.